All right, so you want to lower your car, eh? Drop it down, kill the gap, better looks, better handling. But what if something bad happens? Oh no. Well, worry no more, because we're going to go through everything that you'll run into on a daily driver that's lowered in a big city like Los Angeles. And if you can do it here and it's no big deal, then surely you can do it wherever you're at as well. So once we go over everything, you should be able to decide for yourself if lowering is right for you. All right, so if you've never lowered your vehicle before, driven one or owned one, you're probably going to want to start with lowering springs. Now, if you can afford it or if you want to, you could always jump to coilovers, but just swapping your springs is going to be the simplest, easiest, safest, and probably the most mild option for you to get into it. Typically, you're going to get about 1.5 or 2 inches of drop. Nice, but not extreme, and pretty doable for a daily driver. Make sure you check out our article, Things to Consider When Lowering Your Vehicle, to get more details on specs and all the nitty-gritties of some of the more extreme options. But for now, we're just going to talk about lowering springs. All right, so you've got your springs on and you're ready to venture out into the world of potholes, speed bumps, and driveways. Oh my. First things first, whenever you modify the performance or anything about the vehicle, you're going to have to also modify the way you drive it to match. The suspension is no exception. So let's go down the most common concerns and obstacles that you'll run into with the lowered vehicle and how you can address each one. Alignment. Now, anytime you change the height of the vehicle, whether you lower it or raise it, you need to get the alignment done. In the case of lowering springs, another thing you're going to want to be concerned with is the fact that the springs are going to settle a little bit. So if the car doesn't look as low as you think it should be after you install them, give it a couple weeks or a few hundred miles. It'll settle in, it should look good, and you can get it aligned and you'll be good to go. Alignment adjustment components. Now these are optional technically, but the more extreme you go with the lowering, the more you're probably going to want to be able to dial in custom alignment settings with stuff like camber arms or toe links. Some inner tire wear is to be expected, and having a little bit of camber or toe is actually beneficial for performance driving. But if you want to get rid of some of that excess tire wear or correct some rubbing, you can make adjustments with those alignment components. So they're kind of optional. I do recommend them, but at the end of the day, it's your call. So are you going to rub? Another big question we get a lot. Are your tires going to slam into your fenders or other parts of the wheel well? Well, if you're running just simple lowering springs and you're on the stock wheels and tires still, chances are you're probably going to be fine. But if you have a more aggressive wheel fitment, offset, tires, or if you're slammed, then there's a good chance you might run into some rubbing. Those alignment components we talked about previously are going to come in handy as far as dialing out some of that rubbing. And if you're really extreme, you might have to roll your fenders as well. Just make sure before you get any wheel and tire combo that you check the forums online and make sure that your fitment specs are going to be okay with your particular vehicle at whatever ride height you're going after. Do your homework. All right, scraping. Now this is when your car actually rubs against the ground. As you probably know already, this happens to you whether your car is lowered or not. So if you're lowered, you're just going to have to take extra care and concern for making your way over these types of obstacles. Now, how do we do that? Well, basically 2 things that you do. Slow down and go at an angle. So when you hit anything straight on, the severity of that angle is just going to increase the odds that you run into your front bumper or other parts of the bottom of the car. But if you attack from an angle and go slow, the severity of that speed bump, driveway, whatever it might be, is going to be decreased, and you're less likely to damage your vehicle. So there are a bunch of different types of obstacles that you basically have to do this over, so let's go through them one by one. Driveways, one of the most common obstacles. Before you've even hit the road yet, you're already running into something you got to be careful on. Now, these can be tricky because a lot of times you're limited in space. When you've got the open road, you can swerve around stuff and whatnot, but a driveway is a set width, and oftentimes you're going to have to use the entire width of that driveway to try and avoid scraping. So do that. Swing wide, go slow again, take that angle, and you should be good. If you don't, they actually do make a product that fills in the gutter and reduces the severity of a driveway. If you're in a position to get one of those, great, go for it. Otherwise, be careful, go slow, take an angle, and you should be okay. All right, so you made it out of your driveway. What are we running into now? Potholes. They're everywhere. Everybody hates them, lowered or not. So what do we got to do? Prevention is basically all we're looking at here. There's no technique for driving over them, and the likelihood of damage is just going to be increased if you're in a lowered car. So you got to be extra careful, of course. Give yourself extra room. Don't tailgate. Get off the phone. Don't text and drive. And hell, you're on stiffer springs anyway, so you can swerve much better. Go ahead and get good at it. Watch out. All right, next up on our list of obstacles is the dip. Now, dips can be sneaky because they're kind of hard to see and they're not often labeled, although sometimes they are. If they are, make sure you slow down ahead of time because you're going to want to give people behind you ample warning so they don't rear end you while you're crawling over your little dip. But just go slow and you'll be fine, and you don't have to join the group of gouges that you see on the ground. Don't add any to it. Just creep on slow and you'll be good. And let's not forget everybody's favorite, the speed bump, right? Yeesh. Yeah, they suck. But again, same technique. Go slow, take it at an angle. The speed bump's cousin, the speed hump, is less harsh normally, and that's gonna work out in your favor. You probably don't even have to go at an angle over those, but you should probably slow down a bit to keep it safe. Now, a special note on humps and dips that are at speed, like on the highway, these can actually be extremely dangerous due to the speed of the vehicle and the reduced suspension travel that you have when the vehicle is lowered. Your likelihood of bottoming out the suspension and potentially slamming the bottom of the vehicle on the ground is definitely increased in a lowered vehicle. Slow down, look way ahead, and anticipate these obstacles before you get to them. It's really your only case scenario on the highway because you're not going to be able to go over an angle. You've just got to slow down if you see one of those obstacles coming. You can crack your oil pan, you can rip off your splash shield, bad stuff can happen. At worst, you could lose control of the vehicle, and we don't want that to happen. So be vigilant, look far ahead, and slow down as much as possible in anticipation of any high-speed humps or dips. All right, last up, unavoidable emergency obstacles. Now, if you run into one of these, don't worry, it happens to the best of us. What you're gonna wanna do is slow down the vehicle safely if you can. Do not slam on the brakes. This will cause the weight of the vehicle to transfer to the front, which is gonna reduce your already reduced ground clearance. So don't slam on the brakes, just let off the gas and steer out of it as safely as you can. Hopefully you wind up okay, and just make sure to make a mental note. You'll start building a map in your head of all the problematic spots around town, and eventually it'll be second nature for you to avoid them. All right, that about sums it up. Be prepared. It's the Scout motto for a reason. It's really the best bet you're gonna have when you're in a lowered vehicle, and really in any vehicle. Keep your eyes peeled, give yourself ample room, go slow, take things at an angle, and there's really no reason why you can't enjoy the low life in a daily driver, even in a city like Los Angeles. So drop it like it's hot, and we'll see you out there. If you got any other questions about driving a lowered car, just hit us up in the comments or email us at sales@shocksurplus.